Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Todd Sylvester, with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Veracity Networks, and my good friend, Drew Peterson. Thank you for believing in me. And I'd like to thank the listeners. Thank you for tuning in week after week. And we have just grown leaps and bounds. And I want to thank you because it wouldn't be possible without you. But I also would like to thank all my guests. I mean, I've had some amazing people on, and because of their amazing stories and their inspiration and their leadership and their vulnerability, it's truly made this podcast trending. And I'm just grateful for that. And today's going to be no different. We have another amazing person on today. His name's AJ Hunt. AJ, thanks for joining us today.
Of course. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. A little background on AJ. He grew up in Washington State. He moved to Utah in 2011 to attend BYU. He now currently lives in Arizona. Is it Phoenix?
Gilbert. So right
Gilbert.
outside Phoenix.
Just a little outside Phoenix. And he calls himself a regular guy. He has a very empowering message of hope. And you guys are going to be blown away by his story. He was paralyzed in a car accident back in 2014. He had thoughts of suicide, not wanting to live, but he's now he's moved through that, and he's emerged through with a new perspective of hope and peace. And I love that you say that we are not our circumstances. And I want to get more into detail into that. He works as a contracted media buyer, helping his clients grow their e-commerce business. And he's just got an amazing story. He just did a promotion with this amazing video, which reached over 100,000 people across the United States. We'll talk more about that as well. And anyway, AJ is just an amazing man, and he's going to touch your hearts today. So AJ, again, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Todd.
So why don't you tell us, where did you obviously grew up in Washington State. Tell us a little bit about your family life.
So my family is awesome. I have no complaints about my family, but my parents are awesome. I'm the oldest of four boys. So
okay,
that was always a good time growing up. Lots to do always. And I don't know that I was kind of a jerk as an older brother, to be honest. And I learned a lot about that. I'm a lot closer with my brothers now than I was growing up. But so yeah, my parents are awesome. They were always super loving and supporting. They had us participate in lots of things. So I tried all the sports and a few instruments. One that I really latched onto was piano. So I studied piano from the time I was like 7 or 8 until I graduated high school, and I competed, and that was sort of my thing.
Wow.
And so I would practice 2 or 3 hours a day through my teenage years, and then compete a few times a year. And so I think the main thing about my childhood is that it all kind of made sense. There wasn't anything. There wasn't anything traumatic about my childhood or really very difficult. And it seemed like if you do the right things, then you get the good stuff, right? And It's sort of like a simple life with maybe you're not, basking in opulence and a bunch of wealth, but you're not starving. Things are good. You can go on vacations. I mean, it's like, it was pretty chill.
Yeah.
And I also learned that I felt like if I worked hard, I could accomplish anything. And I got that from piano. I knew, I learned that if I lost a piano, it was probably because I didn't work hard enough. It wasn't because there was something intrinsic about me that was not as good as the other pianists. It was just like, all right, put in more time. And I got into bodybuilding in high school as well. And It was sort of the same deal. It's like the more time you put in, the more you fuel your body well, the more you can look like you want. And so it's this mindset very much of the more I do, the more I get, and not trying to blame other people.
Right.
And that really set the stage for a lot of stuff later in life, in a good way and a bad way. Because as we'll find out, as we've all found out, that there are some things that you just can't change.
Sure. And so, being a piano player, let's talk about that just for a minute. Talk about the discipline it takes to do that, because especially on the level you said you were competing, I can imagine that taught you some very valuable lessons, just, that maybe a lot of people like myself don't appreciate. I mean, I can't walk up to a piano and do anything other than maybe chopsticks.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
talk about that.
it's hard. It's not an easy skill, obviously. I remember, actually, I don't remember. I've been told by my mom when I was 8 or 9, and learning to do both hands at one time was a big struggle for me. And so from my mom would actually sit there with me and make me practice for like 30 minutes a day or whatever, and I
Right.
would sit at the piano and cry, and I probably hated her for it. But you get through it, right? And so I think the biggest lesson from piano is like you can get, by the time I was 16, 17, 18, the sheet music that I would look at, it was like my grandma used to look at it and be like, there's more black than white on the page because there's so many notes and like so much going on. And that can be sort of overwhelming to look at it. But I knew that, okay, I mean, maybe I can't play it now, but in 7 months, 3 hours a day, like I will be able to. And that being able to break it down and think about things in that process served me well in a lot of areas.
Yeah. Right on. So you also mentioned, well, in the studying that I've done on you, that you grew up in a household that was, a faithful household. You guys were, obviously a church going family. Talk about how that played a role in your life.
Yeah, and I don't know how I forgot to say that just a second ago. That was, I mean, so yeah, my parents, we grew up faithful members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and my dad and mom are, it's hard to overstate the importance of that in my childhood. It was going to church every Sunday, praying in morning, in the morning and evening, we're reading scriptures together, praying over meals. Just everything was focused around church activity, and
Right.
And it's an awesome community. So many supportive neighbors. And the part that I grew up in Washington is sort of like a pocket of LDS members, and so in Washington in general, there aren't that many, but in where I grew up, it's maybe 10% LDS, and so there were lots of members, lots of friends that I had in the church, and a big focus on service in my home. In the church, we have callings where we volunteer, as I'm sure lots of your audience knows that, but and that was a big part. My dad was a bishop when I was a kid, and so he was always busy with that. My mom would have Relief Society and doing women's things, and so it was just a part of life. You pay tithing. You don't really think about it. You serve, you give, and that became a big part of my identity as well. It's like I'm somebody who helps people,
Right.
And I found a lot of meaning through that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's beautiful. Well, I know there's a lot we could talk about your childhood, but I want to just jump ahead here a little bit. And, you were in an accident back in 2014 that left you paralyzed. And I want to set the stage before I want you to share that story and kind of, just give us all the details on that. But you mentioned, again, in the studying that I've done on you, AJ, you said this. You said, I spent time trying to find purpose for my life outside of who I am, which made living very difficult. And I think that's an important message, because I think a lot of us get stuck in that. We're trying to find all this purpose in life, but it goes against who we really are, so to speak, right? And so to set the stage, I know that's something that you have figured out through this whole process. And so why don't you let us know and our listeners know kind of what happened to you and what happened back in 2014, and then just share that story with us.
Yeah, definitely. So I did summer sales the summer. So I served a mission for my church. Went to Nicaragua, got back in late 2013, and went back to school at BYU the January following, so January of 2014. And as many return missionaries do at BYU, they meet somebody who says, "Hey, I have an opportunity for you to make a bunch of money this summer, knocking doors."
Right.
And so I was like, "Sweet, that sounds good." So I spent the summer in New York and California selling solar panels door to door, and had a great time. It's very fun. And then on our way back to BYU from the Bay Area, my buddy who was driving the car, this little Corolla, it was sort of like dusk in the middle of Nevada, and he just spaced out, maybe started dozing off a little bit, and realized that he was coming out really fast on the car in front of us, realized too late and swerved, and then overcorrected, slammed on the brakes. We spun out, went off the road, and flipped a couple of times. And when the dust settled, we were all awake, and nobody seemed to be dead, which was good.
Right.
And the dust settled, and my two buddies, I was sitting in the back seat, but my two buddies were in the front seats. They got out of the car to look at the damage, and I reached to open the door, and my arm just didn't move.
Oh,
And
wow.
when the car had flipped, I'd felt my neck sort of crack. I don't know if you've ever broken a bone,
Yeah.
but you can sort of like hear it internally. You kind of
Yeah.
feel like, and I had felt that. And so I knew something had happened, and then when my arm didn't move, and I looked over, and it was in kind of a weird position above my head. And I realized it didn't feel like it was in a weird position above my head. And so it sort of hit me that, okay, this is serious.
Right. Yeah.
And realized I couldn't move my legs at all. And it was hard to breathe as well, because my diaphragm was affected. So realized that I needed help quickly. So we got, my buddy called 911, and we got the EMTs out there. So through a life flight and an ambulance drive, eventually I ended up back at the U of U hospital. They have a great spinal cord rehab program there.
Yeah.
And went to surgery where they fused my spine, actually, 3 or 4 vertebrae in my neck. And I did a rehab there for a couple months. And it's really interesting, Todd, because so I had just spent 2 years in Nicaragua telling people that difficult things they have a purpose. And
Right.
people in Nicaragua are generally very poor. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. And they face a lot of physical hardship every day. And so it's coming from such an easy background. It's strange for me looking back now that I was so confident in telling these people that, your suffering has a purpose, and like, there's a reason for this. Because I had never suffered. Like, let's just be honest. I had never,
Right.
not physically at least. And so when I got injured, it was actually a pretty peaceful experience, because I was like, all right, it's my turn, and let's do this.
Really? That was interesting what you just said there. You said you felt peaceful.
Yeah, which is weird to say. I
Yeah.
know. But I mean, sitting there in the back of the car, newly paralyzed, it really felt like, all right, it's my turn to like show what I have, I guess, or
Wow.
it's a challenge that I'm going to overcome. And at that time, I think I probably imagined overcoming it as walking again, or
Right.
not being paralyzed anymore. But it was, all those stories you read about, like, I told the doctors that,
Yeah.
like, they told me I wasn't going to walk, and then I did. It's like, all right, that's going to be me. So
Right.
maybe at the time I thought it was that, but it was peaceful. And I had some really interesting spiritual conversations with the EMTs, prayed with them and stuff about my beliefs about the afterlife and the meaning of difficulties in life, and things that were probably not their normal experience.
Sure.
And then in the hospital as well. So, I had this need to serve people, and I broke a bone, but it wasn't actually that bad of an injury. It was just, I broke the wrong bone. and so it
Right.
paralyzed me.
Yeah.
But I was on a floor with people who had these gnarly accidents where they were, they couldn't read or speak anymore, or they had broken every bone in their face, or they had like just terrible things. And I was able to, because I was pretty much just living in the hospital, I was able to actually go out and serve the people on my floor and meet friends. And
Oh, wow.
so I would spend a lot of time just going into random hospital rooms and being like, "Hey, I'm AJ. Like, what's your story?" And like trying to
Well,
meeting people.
can I stop you just for a second here? Because I'm a little blown away here at this. I mean, here you are, it happens to you. You felt this peace. You had some spiritual experiences, which were fantastic, I'm sure. But you had like, hey, I'm going to do this. This is my turn, and I'm going to overcome this. And here you are in the hospital, reaching out to other people who are hurting, trying to find out what their story is. I mean, was there a moment though where you felt like, man, this isn't fair? Or did you feel depressed? I mean, what? I'm just a little blown away by this, what you're saying right now.
Yes, there were moments when it felt more overwhelming, and I'm feeling a little bit of emotion, so I might have to
It's okay.
take a swallow. But like I remember the first time I saw myself in the power chair, and that was hard when it was like, that can't be me.
Right.
But it was just kind of natural for me to seek, I guess, solace in helping other people. And I didn't really think about it. It just made me feel good. And in that kind of sense, it was a little bit self-serving, but I did like, I felt a lot of peace of getting out of my own head and helping other people and feeling like I could do something for them. And so it was just kind of natural.
Wow, that's impressive. And maybe a lot of that has to do with your upbringing, right? Faithful household that you lived in, and just kind of your perspective on life and that kind of thing. I'm sure helped a lot as well. So you're there in the hospital to kind of maybe pick up from there. You're going around trying to console people and help them, and obviously draw strength from them as well.
Yeah, and so I was there for a couple of months, and then after the hospital, I moved in with my grandparents who live not too far away in Salt Lake City, and my mom moved in with us as well. So she was like my primary caretaker, and then I had a couple aides who would do some of the more like technical things for a while, and so during that time is when it became a little more difficult. So over that year, when I was living with my grandparents, I started to realize that I probably wasn't going to walk again. Probably wasn't going to happen. When I heard about these miraculous stories of people gaining movement back in their legs and things, it was usually pretty early on that they saw signs. At least, they were able
Right.
to kick a leg out, or like they were able to, take a step in the first year or something where it made sense. And I wasn't getting anything close to that. And so I started to question, like, man, is this all actually, is the system that I thought I understood of do good and have good done to you, does it actually work? Does it actually make sense?
Yeah.
And I just sort of lost my bearings, and I held on for a long time, just like trying to push through. But I was slowly losing my I guess spiritual identity of how I thought God worked and how I thought the universe worked.
Yeah.
Where it was like, okay, I'm trying everything, and I'm doing everything that I thought I'm supposed to be doing, spiritually speaking, and I'm not getting any better. And it's like, I didn't sign up for this. Like,
Right.
this doesn't feel like, this is the first time when I had to face like, all right, this, life is not fair. And there's nothing that I can do to change it. It's not a piano competition where I can just practice more.
Mm.
This is something that I cannot affect. But God can, right? God could do it. So why isn't he doing it? Because I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard adjustment to figure out, what does this mean? Like, I'd been told that God loves me, and it's easy to believe that God loves you if your parents are great and you have dinner every night and like you have money that you need. It's like, but as soon as there's something that seems like God could change this if he wants to, then it's like, why doesn't he? And if my son were about to get in a car accident and paralyze him, I would stop it if I could.
Sure.
And he didn't. So why not? And that was
Wow.
really difficult.
Yeah.
And so that forced me to analyze what I really believed and who I was on a deeper level than these sort of surface level immature beliefs about how things were supposed to work.
Right. Wow. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier that, hey, if I do good things are going to happen to me. And, you're a good person, good doing, pretty much good things. You're not trying to hurt anybody, So in your mind, that's kind of the way God works. If I'm doing good, he's going to bless me. He's going to give me all these great things. But then, you have something like this that challenges I would imagine this challenged every belief you've ever had, not just about God or religion, but just your whole life in general. And you mentioned it about what's the purpose. And we talked about here earlier that when you try to live outside yourself, you got to that point where you didn't feel like you wanted to be alive.
Yeah, exactly. And so as I lost hold of what I felt like was my spiritual foundation, which was actually pretty shaky, which I thought was stable. And at the same time, I'm losing my physical foundation because, my hands are paralyzed now, so I can't play piano like I used to. I can plunk things, but I can't play really.
Yeah.
And I can't exercise the same way anymore. I can't go for a run. I can't go backpacking if I want. Like I can't.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are different. So it was like, who am I now? Who am I physically? And everything spiritually that I thought doesn't really fit the mold of, or the experience that I'm having now. And so I came to the conclusion that, well, it must all be wrong. And if that's the case, then there's no purpose to me suffering this. And it's just sort of a logical thing. Like, do I want to suffer it or not? And a lot of the time, the answer to that question was no, I don't. And if there's no purpose anyway, I might as well end it. And it was a depressing thought. I mean, I would tell my friends at the time, I felt like I figured it out, because I would say, I viewed suicide as just a choice. It's just like, yeah, I'm either going to do it or I'm not. This morning, I'm not going to do it. I don't know about tomorrow, but I just like separated myself. And it's funny because I felt like that was so empowering at the time, but, and I would tell my friends like, hey, yeah, it's like the most motivational thing I can tell myself in the morning is, why am I not going to kill myself today? And if I can find a reason, then I go throughout the day. And it was like,
wow.
But it was so like just dark. Like I felt like I was dealing with it well, but looking back on it now, there was just no happiness in it, no fulfillment, no, it was empty. It was just so empty. And a few things happened that were able to bring me to this amazing realization that I had, that has changed my life forever going forward. One, so I started reaching out to other to spiritual centers that I had never really investigated previously. One of them is this guy named Thomas McConkie in Salt Lake.
I know Tom.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, he's
Oh,
such a good guy. I've actually sat down with him in person, and he's helped me as well. So
awesome.
glad you brought him up. That he's a great guy.
Yeah. So I met him a couple times on Zoom and over like meditation
Yeah,
um, sessions. But before that, I read his book, Navigating Modern Faith Crisis.
yeah,
And that really opened my mind to thinking about um, the non dichotomy of spirituality. Like it's not that I have to be this way or this way. It's like we're figuring things out. And I was able to kind of step back and be okay with the fact that I don't understand things about what I'm going through.
right.
And, and then I had a really influential friend. So I'd met this girl in college who we were in the same ward, we went to church together. And I didn't know her that well, but in college, I was always just really impressed by how well she seemed to know just who she was, just herself. And we had a couple of conversations. I knew that she was into yoga and
Yeah.
some of the more like Eastern philosophy stuff. And so I just reached out to her and I was sort of like, hey, whatever you're smoking, I want some.
Right.
What do you think about? Like, what do you believe about these things? And how do you think? And she recommended this book that I read, and then it led me to a couple other books. Eventually, to a book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh yeah,
And
great book.
I'm so glad you're familiar with it. That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, oh yeah, I've read it twice.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm so glad. And the main point of the book and what resonated with me so much is that you are not what you experienced or even what you think. You're so much deeper than that. And the proof of that is that you can separate yourself. And I remember this moment when I'm reading this and like it's sort of intellectually making sense. And then it was like, boom, I experienced it. And I just started to laugh.
wow,
And
really.
I just had this moment of like, holy cow, I'm I'm not these things. Like all this suffering that I'm going through from thinking about why is this happening to me and like my life is so hard and um it was just like that's not me.
Right.
I am I am untouched by the fact that I'm in a wheelchair. You know, my body is handicapped or that I you know I emotionally struggle to come to terms with like the spiritual things that I'm unsure about. Like that has nothing to do with actually who I am. Who I am is this deep sense of consciousness, and consciousness sounds like new agey. I'm not trying to be new agey, but just that who I am on the deepest level has nothing to do with what happens to me or what my mind is doing to me at any point in time.
Right.
And that was just this incredible epiphany that it was like a taste, right? It's like seeing the sunlight through a crack, and it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there was light up there. I thought it was just a dark ceiling, and then it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
there's this whole world, and then your ego like comes back in and tries to seal up the hole, right? And it's like, no, wait, there's still sunlight there, and so that was an incredible moment. And what I've tried to do since then is just search for how to keep more of that light
Yeah.
in my life, and just knowing that the light is there has been so impactful. And I want to help everybody who doesn't see that light for whatever reason. They think that there's no purpose to life because they feel like their life is so difficult or things have happened to them. I just want to help them not suffer more than they have to.
Yeah.
And that's really, yeah, what I'm trying to do.
No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Very well said. Is that the moment too when you started, instead of waking up going, okay, today I don't think I'm going to kill myself, to, hey, now I'm starting to see, I'm, I guess the opposite would be I'm glad I'm alive today. Did you started noticing that kind of shift in mindset and attitude as well?
Yeah, so it allowed me to move in that direction, let's say, right?
Okay.
So it was no longer, why am I not going to kill myself? It was like, hey, today's today I'm alive because I am, and I'm here, and that's great. And then it allowed me to move toward, today's going to be amazing because I'm excited about, like, there's so much opportunity today. And so it opened that door. Right.
Right. Wow. So what do you do? Here we are today, and we're listening to your story. I know that you shared a message on a video on Facebook. You wanted to reach over 100,000 people. You raised a bunch of money for it as well, and it's still going strong. What do you do on a daily basis, AJ, to kind of keep you having these same experiences, knowing why you're here? Because again, it sounds like you've found your purpose through this, like your real purpose. So what does your day look like, and how do you kind of keep yourself moving in that direction?
So I try to focus on positive action. So and I'm working with a life coach now. Actually, I hired a life coach, Brandon Sulcer. Maybe you've heard of him.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, we talk a lot about positive action. So I like to wake up early. I wake up at 4 a.m. actually.
Hey, so do I.
Awesome.
Right on, man.
I wake up at 4, and it takes me a while to get ready. It takes me about 45 minutes to get ready in the morning, just because getting out of bed is hard and stuff. And I live independently, and so things just take time. And then after I get ready, I spend 10 to 20 minutes meditating.
Okay.
And doing a vision sort of work as well. And then I spend 30 minutes to 60 minutes exercising. And that's big for me. I really enjoy the feeling of getting moving, and it feels like progress, before the sun's even up, which is nice.
Yeah.
Then I spend another 30 to 60 minutes reading, and we'll eat breakfast, and then I work.
Right on.
So that's kind of my morning. And then in the evenings are usually taken up by, like, medical stuff I have to do for being paralyzed. Either that or I work a lot. So I try not to work too much, but I'm usually working until I go to bed. So
wow.
The mornings are really when I have my routine.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's something about, so it's interesting. That's one of the things I teach my clients as well, is this, winning the first hour of the day, so to speak. And I had a mentor years ago when I was overcoming my difficult situation. He told me I need to get up and work on myself a little bit, and so I get up at 4 a.m., do the same thing. I call it my hour of power. And I do the similar things that you're doing, and, a few different things, but the end result is, basically, kind of winning the day and getting ready to go and be able to do those kind of things. And so it's really cool to hear you say that that's something that you do, to kind of help get you going. And so have you noticed that really does make a big difference in how, you tackle the day?
Totally does. Yeah. I mean, it's the difference between waking up at 7:20 or whatever, and then throwing my clothes on and, like, popping something in the microwave and then starting work, versus waking up at 4 and then having 3.5 hours under my belt of self-improvement, or before I start work, is huge. Then, like, it doesn't mean that I also do more stuff during the day. Right. So, like,
sure. Yeah.
Because that ego will try to just patch up the light again, like throughout the whole day. And, like, I have a job where there's a lot of uncertainty in what we have to do just day to day for clients. Is like, all right, is this going to work? Is it not? And, like, that can be really stressful for my ego still, because it tries to identify with what my clients are going to think of me, or in the personal life, what are girls I'm dating going to think of me, or what are, like, my neighbors thinking of me if I reach out to them, or these things where it's a constant battle of reminding myself that I'm more than that. And so I will read. I've built out a life purpose with my life coach, and so I'll read that during the day. And take breaks to just look up outside, look at the sky, take in nature, find beauty around me. Um, I just read Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Yeah.
And so I'm reading the first scroll every day. If Are you familiar with that book?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but I've heard about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's it's a it's a book where there's this guy, there's a salesman who's passed down this wisdom to this other salesman, and it's in the form of 12 scrolls. And the idea of the book is that you read one scroll 3 times a day for a month, and then you move on and do that for a year. And so the first scroll is, I greet this day with love in my heart. And it's this thing you read. And so I'll read sort of this mantra a few times a day. Point being, like, it's a constant struggle, right? The ego keeps trying to put me back into this mode of defining myself by what's happening to me, what I've done, or what I may not be in the future, or whatever. And during the day, it's just fighting that back and remembering that I'm more than that.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. Another thing I've learned about you that, growing up, you used to have a stutter.
Yeah. I feel like I still have a stutter.
Oh, really?
But yeah.
Well, you haven't stuttered once today.
You don't think so? All
No,
right.
not
There
at
we
all.
go.
Well, and I'm sure that was a challenging thing. How did you handle that? And how did that maybe help you grow as well? Kind of learning to deal with that.
Yeah, man. Well, man, the stutter. Honestly, so I really feel like I still struggle with it. I'm always surprised when people say, "Man, I didn't even notice." I'm like, "Man, I notice every day,
I had no
all the
idea.
time." That's awesome. But yeah, as a kid, it made me afraid to do things like read out loud in class, or
Right.
talk to new people. I felt like they were gonna, and I did get made fun of it sometimes. So it's not like these fears were unfounded
Right.
in what may happen. But I think that was my first sort of identification with something about me that isn't actually me.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I still sort of think about when I'm introducing myself to somebody, or if I'm giving like a public sort of speech or something. But it's been, let's see, I don't really work on it that much anymore.
Okay.
I went to speech therapy as a kid. And they
Okay.
gave me some techniques. I bought a course a few years ago on Udemy to like try to, I don't know, push it back a little bit more. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it doesn't actually affect my life as much as like my ego thinks that it does. And so it's just been one more thing to remember that's not me.
Yeah. Well, and then what do you think of this statement? And I know because I stole this from you. Hard stuff has a purpose.
Yeah.
So with all these things you've been through, the accident, being paralyzed, overcoming a stutter, just all, just everyday life in general that can be difficult and challenging. How has this all overall helped you as an individual, um, and being a light in this world today?
Yeah. So it's helped me because it's been the catalyst to finding out who I really am. And I think that when I think about my life without being paralyzed, I just think, how would I have ever figured this stuff out? Like
Yeah.
it's hard to think. I think that there's a lot of unnecessary suffering that we go through because we are identified with things that aren't us. But at some point, I think that there needs to be some suffering that pulls us out of our just sleepiness.
Yeah.
and makes us think, what's the point? And so I'm grateful that I'm paralyzed. I don't think that,
Wow.
I don't look at it as, yeah, it makes like day-to-day life hard, but it's just, I'm grateful that I have had this experience. If I could be healed tomorrow, I would take the pill, but
Right.
I'm super grateful.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I found so much peace and happiness as a result of what paralysis has made me just think about that. I'm grateful for it. And that's what I think suffering in general allows us to do. It allows us to step back and take a mental checkup of, what am I identified with? What am I thinking about? How am I talking to myself about this story? How can I contribute? Like it's just it just gives us an opportunity to realign or to align for the first time, like it was for me as I was reading that book and had just this amazing epiphany. And it gives us a chance to bring light back in, I think.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. As I'm listening to your story, AJ, and your life, I was connecting some dots in my own mind, and tell me what you think of this. You were a piano player growing up, which it requires a lot of discipline. I mean, there was days that you said you would be like crying, complaining to your mom that you had to play, but you stuck it out and you got to the point where you were competing, which it's just a lot of discipline and things like that. And, I think when I see what you're doing now and, overcoming these obstacles and these challenges, I mean, to hear you say you felt at peace when you were paralyzed and like, hey, I'm going to do this. I almost feel like what you did with practicing piano had prepared you for all of this. I mean, because the mindset you were in, even though yes, you struggled, which I mean, anyone would understand that, but I don't know. I mean, I'm connecting those dots, at least in my own mind. Like if it wouldn't have been through that discipline that you learned what it looks like to work hard, what do you think of that?
I think there's no doubt. I think that so it's interesting that you mentioned discipline specifically, because I've always been good at physical discipline. So putting physical things to the side in order to achieve something else that I want physically.
Right.
But emotional discipline is a new thing for me, where because I've always been good at achieving things, but I've never really felt it. And so it was like this, like in college, I was pursuing this really rigorous career in investment banking. And so I would spend a lot of time outside of class studying for interviews and trying to do even better in class than I may have if I wasn't pursuing this, because I knew it was such a competitive field and all these things. And it's not like I enjoyed it. I didn't, but it was like, I'm going to do this because I know that I have to if I want this thing. And point being, like, I mean, I think I averaged like 5 hours sleep in college, and like I sort of like trashed my body to get this done. And like for some people that's great, but I'm learning now that the discipline that brings peace is actually controlling my mind. And so realizing that thoughts that pop into my mind sometimes that are negative, that are self-defeating, that are just, they're untrue on a base level because they're not actually who I am. Being able to push those aside when they feel so real. They feel so real, man. Like you're just sitting there laying in bed and it's like, and it feels like, but I'm not happy right now. Like, how can I be happy? I'm just not. Or like they just feel like the story is so real. But being able to push those aside and focus on who you truly are, that's a discipline that I'm learning now. And I think you're right. Learning that, putting aside going to my buddy's house as a high schooler to practice piano for the competition, I think is exactly the same skill applied to a mental situation that I'm learning now. So I think you're right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So talk a little bit about this video you did on Facebook and why you did this and what your goal was with it.
Yeah. So this year is 6 years since I got injured. And I normally on the anniversary of my injury, so August 27th of every year, I try to do something like a little cheeky and like funny to commemorate it in a way that will make other people maybe, I don't know, laugh or make light of a serious issue, So
Right.
like I would buy a cake for my wheelchair, or like I usually framed it as a birthday party for my wheelchair. That's usually how I would do it. And it was cool. Like people would come, it's fun. And like, I'd like post something funny about it, but I didn't actually really feel it until this year.
Mm.
And this year, my anniversary was just a few weeks after this big epiphany that I had. And so my life was changed pretty radically in a pretty short span. And I was like, I want to share this for my 6th-year anniversary in a way that is more meaningful than I have in the past. And so, we've talked about this, but the Mormon message that's about you really inspired me in a way that I was like, man, if I could tell my story like that.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know that was about you when we first got in touch. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Small world.
And so I found a videographer who said he'd be willing to donate the time to make the video if I could rent the equipment. And so
Right.
I put up some money to rent the equipment. And I was like, I'm sure that this would get a lot of attention just from me posting and asking my friends to share and stuff. But I'm a media buyer by trade. And so I spend my time spending my clients' money on Facebook. And I was like, what if I could get like $400 to back a campaign on Facebook, pushing this out to people, inorganically, right? Now, and on Facebook, for about every $10 you spend, it depends, but 10 to 15 bucks you can get in front of 1,000 people. And so I was like, if we could get $300 or $400, that would be what, 30,000 people, 40,000 people, maybe, just like that. And like, that would be awesome. And I'm sure they would share it. And like, there are ways you can structure the campaigns to make it, give it some like virality essentially. Yeah. And I was like, how cool to put some effort behind, use my professional skills to make a positive impact in this way. And then I was like, all right, where am I going to get that money? I started getting like an imposter syndrome, honestly, where I'm like, why would somebody else contribute to this?
Right.
Like, this should just be my thing. Like, they have rent to pay and like groceries to buy. Like, why would anybody else contribute? But I was talking it over with a buddy, and he was like, just like make a GoFundMe, just try it. Like, what's the worst thing that happens? And I was like, okay, sounds good. So I set up the GoFundMe. I think I set the goal at like $600. And like a few hours after I launched it and just like posted about it on Instagram, I remember I was driving. I was sitting in a Taco Bell parking lot. Okay, and my mom texted me and said, "Hey, the GoFundMe is doing awesome." And I was like, "Yeah, it looks like it's got like $200 in it." And she's like, "Yeah, it's got a little bit more since then." And I was like, "What?" And so I looked at it, and it was at like almost $1,000.
Wow.
And I was like, I broke down in the parking lot. I just started crying because I just felt so just supported. It's like, holy cow, people don't even know. I haven't even made the video. And people believe that what I have to say is important enough for them to give money it can be anything. It can be rent, groceries, fun times. And they decided that it was worth that. And so we made the video, and I just wanted to get it out to as many people as possible. And so I think we ended up reaching somewhere in the realm of 250,000 people so far. I mean, it's still shareable if anybody wants to share.
Yeah, no, we'll let people know where to find it. So that's awesome.
So that was the idea. And I just was blown away that people were so supportive. It was amazing.
Yeah. Well, your story truly is inspiring. I was late in the game, but I did share your video on my Facebook feed, and I got a ton of really amazing responses, and I mean, I've watched it probably 4 times, and it's truly, inspired me. And so we'll let people know how to find it. But before we get to that part, I want to ask you this. If there's someone listening to your story right now who is struggling, who feels hopeless, or they're in a dark spot, or they're waking up going, I'm wondering if I'm going to end my life today, what advice could you give them right now?
Yeah. Um, First, I would say that I understand that what you're going through is extremely difficult, and I don't want to minimize that at all, because I think embracing how difficult it is important. And that being said, who you are, who you are is more than this. So this
Right.
situation you're going through is really difficult, and that, but it's not who you are. And if you can separate yourself from your experience and look at it from the point of, why shouldn't this be happening? Who am I to, why am I better than anybody else to have this not happen to me?
Yeah.
And who am I truly underneath all of this surface level difficulty and physical, emotional suffering? I believe that you'll find a peace there. And if you
like that,
want to talk about it, hit me up. I think that it's such a personal journey. Like, I wish that we could just push people through some kind of like a filter and be like, all right, like, now you've suffered enough, like, now figure it out. And but I think I would mostly just want to be there for those people. And, some of the books that I've mentioned, I'd recommend reading them and just holding on for the time being, and just know that you are more than the suffering that you're experiencing.
Wow. Very well said, AJ. I appreciate that. I think we definitely are more than what we're going through. Who we are, just because we go through something difficult doesn't define us as something's wrong with us or we're a bad person. It's just part of that, refining process, so to speak. You think about everything you've been through, and I know, as you go through that, I mean, look what you get to do now. I mean, you're inspiring me. You've inspired hundreds of thousands. We just hit over 100,000 downloads with our podcast here. It's going to go out to a lot of people again. And so we're going to keep, spreading that good news. So, you truly are an amazing man. And I'm so grateful that I've had this opportunity to sit down with you and talk with you and be inspired by your words today.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, I love sharing it, and thanks for giving me the chance.
Absolutely. So if someone did want to reach out to you, ask you a question, learn more about you, find that video that we've been talking about, how would they do that?
So if you want to reach out to me, you can do it on Facebook or Instagram. My Instagram is AJ the Hunt, no underscores or anything. And my Facebook is just AJ Hunt. Feel free to DM me. You can find the video on my Facebook feed. It sounds like your Facebook feed as well, if you go back far enough. You can search the Facebook page that I launched it from is called Who You Are Is Worth Living For. And so if you search that, and the page is still up. I don't post anything more on it, so it's the one video that's there.
Okay, it's there. Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That would be the way.
And we got to give a good shout out to John Knutson for he was a friend of mine who I went to high school with, and you're related to him, and I'm grateful for him for reaching out to me and opening up this opportunity for both of us to get to know each other a little better. So I got to give him a little credit.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Yeah.
Well, AJ, thank you so much. That was amazing, and I'm grateful that you were willing to be vulnerable this morning and to be able to share that with us. And it's gonna help a lot of people.
Yeah, no, thanks again for the chance, and I really hope it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go, folks. Another amazing story. Like I said, AJ Hunt, please reach out to him. Please check him out. Check out that video on his feed or my feed if you can't find it there. And please ask him questions and what have you. And, again, if you're waking up feeling hopeless, maybe not wanting to live, hold on, reach out. I'll help you. AJ will help you. We will do the best that we can. And remember, you're not your circumstances. That's not who you are. I love that message, AJ. That was so well said. But thank you so much, everybody. And thank you for tuning in week after week. And until next time, thanks, AJ.
Thanks, Todd.